Argentina is out of control. Inflation is now running above 160% and rising by more than 20% per month. Interest rates are above 130%, making it impossible for businesses to be able to borrow, to grow and invest. It's estimated that 45% of the population are now living in poverty and struggling to be able to pay for basics such as heating and food. And the value of the Argentine peso has completely collapsed, meaning that the majority of people in Argentina prefer to use the US dollar rather than their home currency. Argentina has over $400 billion of external debt and the largest single exposure to the IMF at $44 billion, and it doesn't have a good track record, having defaulted on its debt obligations 9 times previously. Gross domestic product is down 5% and the country is hurtling towards yet another recession. But with the odds stacked against you and the existing president declaring that he wasn't interested in running for re-election, surely you'd have to be completely insane to take on the job of the president of Argentina right now. Argentina needs a miracle. Argentina needs a hero. Esa es nuestra regla fiscal. Y si los ingresos no aguantarán más, iremos al Banco Central. Javier Milei is a 53-year-old self-confessed anarcho-capitalist who has a superhero alter ego called Captain ANCAP, which is an abbreviated version of anarcho-capitalist. The vast majority of Milei's career has been spent as an economist in business and media in Argentina, and he previously held the role of chief economist at Corporación América, one of Argentina's largest business conglomerates that runs most of the country's airports. In his youth, Milei played as a goalkeeper in the Chacarita soccer club. However, he later stopped playing to focus on his study of economics. In his quest to become one of the prominent economists in Argentina, Milei became a lecturer in Buenos Aires and posted educational videos on YouTube. Over the past 10 years or so, he became a regular pundit on TV shows in Argentina and once presented himself as an expert in tantric sex. Now, despite the fact that he's an alleged tantric sex instructor, 53-year-old Milei has never been married and doesn't have any children. However, in 2022, he started dating Fatima Flores, a 45-year-old comedian, impersonator and actress. The two met on a TV talk show 2 months before she officially separated from her husband, which was reported to have taken place on her birthday. During the presidential election campaign, the two became high profile, and this picture of her impersonating Milei was widely circulated. Milei rose to prominence following libertarian philosophy and opposing the policies and strategies implemented by the Argentinian government. The turning point in both Milei's life and his career came following the death of his beloved Mastiff dog Conan, who died from spinal cancer in 2017. Milei claims that his dog contacted him following his death through a medium and told him that his destiny was to become the president of Argentina. Milei was so distraught following Conan's death that he sent cells to the US-based cloning firm Perpetuate and paid a reported $50,000 to clone him. The Perpetuate website states that 5 clones were produced, and Milei appeared on an Argentinian TV show with 4 of the puppies, all of whom are named after libertarian economists: Murray after Murray Rothbard, Milton after Milton Friedman, and Robert and Lucas after Robert Lucas. The 5th dog, which has never been seen in public, is reported to also be called Conan. Milei has referred to the dogs as his children with 4 paws and claims that his dogs are his best strategists. Mastiffs are enormous animals that can weigh up to 220 pounds or around 100 kilos, and despite being brilliant strategists, they have a ferocious bite. And in 2019, Milei had to have stitches in his arm after getting in the middle of a fight between 2 of his dogs. Referring to the incident, he said, "They argue about who's the favourite, and when I came out of the room, there was this exchange between them and my arm in the middle." As a direct consequence of taking on the 5 Mastiff dogs, Milei has had to give up his apartment in Buenos Aires and move to a house in a gated suburban community, and it's reported that each of the dogs has their own bedroom. Representing the libertarian Libertad Avanza coalition, Milei has ridden the wave of anti-establishment sentiment. Now, whilst we're on the topic of anti-establishmentism, I thought it was worth mentioning that one of the longest words in the English language is anti-disestablishmentarianism, which is a word that describes the people who are opposed to disestablishing the Church of England as the state religion in England. Prior to the 16th century, the dominant religion in England was Roman Catholicism. However, all of that changed when Henry VIII decided that he needed to divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, with whom he had 6 children, but only one survived, and she was a girl. Henry was desperate for a male heir to the throne, so he asked for a divorce based on the grounds that Catherine had been briefly married to his brother Arthur before he died. The divorce went through in 1533, but was not approved by the Pope. So Henry passed the Act of Supremacy in 1534, which confirmed the break from the Catholic Church and made Henry VIII the supreme head of the Church of England. A movement subsequently rose, demanding that the king was removed as the head of the Church of England. And this movement was referred to as disestablishmentarianism, and the people that were opposed to that movement were part of the anti-disestablishmentarianism movement. Now, during his presidential election campaign, Javier Milei made some highly controversial comments about 2 characters that are viewed in very different ways by the Argentine public. The first is the current head of the Roman Catholic Church, and Roman Catholicism accounts for more than 90% of the Argentine public. And the current leader of the Catholic Church is Pope Francis, who's an Argentine national, so he's an absolute legend in Argentina. And the second was Margaret Thatcher, who is definitely not a legend in Argentina, because she was the leader of the UK in 1982, when the last war that Argentina got involved with in the Falkland Islands, which are located around 950 miles from Argentina and around 8,000 miles from the UK, but remain under United Kingdom control. So let's firstly have a look what he said about Pope Francis.
Milei has hurled a series of attacks against the Pope, calling him an imbecile who defends social justice, a son of a bitch preaching communism, and the representative of the evil one on earth. Pope Francis has not returned to Argentina since taking office 10 years ago, in part because of political tensions in his homeland. The Pope has said he could travel there in 2024, but it's unknown if he would do so if Milei wins the presidency.
Now, anybody that's familiar with the Catholic religion will know that forgiveness is a major part. If you repent, then generally your sins are forgiven. And towards the end of the presidential campaign, when it started to look like Milei might actually win, Javier Milei repented and started referring to the Pope as Your Holiness. And in response to this, a spokesman for the Pope said, "We are pleased to announce that His Holiness Pope Francis spoke with our future president to congratulate him and to express his wishes for the unity and progress for our country." The statement added that Pope Francis had promised to send a rosary gift, and they hoped to host a visit very soon. It was later announced that the Pope said that the Argentine president's discourteous comments were made in jest. And it's now been confirmed that Pope Francis's long-awaited trip to his native Argentina is now in planning and is likely to take place at some point during 2024. Now, in terms of Javier Milei's comments on Margaret Thatcher, who's generally hated in Argentina for her role in the Falklands War in 1982, when more than 600 Argentine soldiers lost their lives, alongside over 200 British soldiers. On a TV chat show in the build-up to the election, he described Margaret Thatcher as one of the greatest leaders in the history of humanity. Now, Javier Milei is not a fan of communism. He spoke out against it on a number of different occasions. And he goaded the TV host by saying that Margaret Thatcher had a major role in the fall of the Berlin Wall, and as a result of that, that was why the TV host didn't like Margaret Thatcher. The TV host responded by saying Thatcher is an enemy of Argentina yesterday, today, and always, and our war heroes are absolutely non-negotiable. No matter how important a figure Thatcher seems to you, to me she isn't. In response to this, Milei said that hating Margaret Thatcher was similar to hating Kylian Mbappe, the French footballer, for scoring a hat-trick against Argentina in the most recent World Cup final. And once again, this raised a huge amount of criticism that Milei was comparing a football match to the loss of around 650 lives in the Falklands War. Javier Milei's presidential election campaign was controversial, outrageous, and eye-catching. He frequently carried a chainsaw at political rallies as a symbol of the deep cuts that he was planning for the economy. He also carried the giant $100 bill with his face on it to symbolise his proposal of scrapping the Argentine peso and replacing it with the US dollar. During the campaign, he appeared live on Argentinian TV, smashing a pinata of the central bank, which he was proposing to close down if he was elected as president. Now, one of the major policies that Milei proposed during his election campaign was to drastically reduce the amount of government spending by halving the number of government ministries. And in this video, which Milei posted on TikTok, which he used throughout the presidential campaign, he shows what he considers to be the overinflated state of the Argentinian ministries. And the video goes on to show which ministries he's intending to close down.
Ministerio de Turismo y Deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación, afuera. Ministerio de Trabajo, Empleo y Seguridad Social, afuera. Ministerio de Educación, Adoctrinamiento, afuera. Ministerio de Transporte, afuera. Ministerio de Salud, afuera. Ministerio de Desarrollo Social, afuera. Se acabó el curro de la política. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo!
Some of the more controversial policies that Milei put forward were the potential to sell your own body organs, so you could sell your spare kidney if you needed some extra cash, relaxing the ownership laws on guns and firearms, and tightening the laws on abortion, which was only legalised in Argentina in 2020. At the start of the campaign, Milei was considered to be a rank outsider. However, through the clever use of social media such as TikTok and Instagram, his popularity started to rise, particularly amongst younger voters. His brash style, controversial policies, and plain speaking brought hope to a nation that was weary after years of mismanagement by the previous authorities. And following the initial close-run vote, he won the runoff by a landslide. So Javier Milei has now taken over as the president of Argentina. So will he follow through on the promises that he made during his election campaign? Following a relatively sombre inauguration speech on Sunday, December the 12th, Milei announced that Argentinians will have to endure months of pain. He promised to eradicate inflation and rescue the economy with a shock therapy programme based on drastic cuts to public spending. He said the previous administration had planted inflation that could reach 15,000%. They've ruined our lives. There is no money. There is no alternative to cutting spending. The economy will worsen in the short term before turning around. However, despite all of the razzmatazz of his election campaign, some of the policies that Milei was proposing have not come to fruition. Immediately following his appointment as president, he installed a number of Wall Street veterans into senior positions, including Luis Caputo, who previously served as finance chief and raised bonds in the international markets for the first time since the previous default as economy chief, and Santiago Basile, who's ex-Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan, as head of the central bank. Despite his theatrics of smashing the central bank pinata on live TV, the central bank remains and will not be closed, and the Argentine peso also survives and will not be replaced officially by the US dollar. However, in order to address the problems with the peso, Milei announced a 54% devaluation of the official exchange rate, moving from 366 pesos to $1 to 800, and an additional devaluation of 2% per month. Now, whilst this announcement does go some way to moving the official rate closer to reality, the blue dollar, or the black market rate, is currently around 965 pesos to $1, which is around 20% below the new official rate. As part of the severe spending cuts that Milei has announced, he's halved the number of government ministries, removed the transfer of funds to provinces, suspended all public works, and cut a variety of subsidies that were previously in place for things like transportation, energy, and pensions to the tune of 2.9% of the total GDP of Argentina. Summarising these first round of changes, Manuel Adorni, presidential spokesman, said, "This government has not been left with a patient with a toothache. We have found a patient in intensive care on the verge of dying. We are going to do everything we can to not only bring down the fever, but to save him from the disease that is killing him." Javier Milei followed this statement by saying, "I prefer to tell you an uncomfortable truth rather than a soothing lie. It will be difficult, but we will be successful." The international response has been mixed. Interestingly, the IMF, who are owed more than $44 billion, have praised the bold initial actions. However, it looks extremely likely that Milei is now going to ask the IMF to waive their upcoming debt repayments. So it'll be interesting to see whether the IMF consider that to be a bold action worthy of praise. The general response from the economic press is that the changes are likely to cause higher inflation and trigger a recession. However, given the situation that Argentina is currently in, a recession was inevitable. It's been predicted that Argentina will now enter stagflation, which is a combination of a stagnant economy and inflation, for a period of at least 12 months. And it's expected that the powerful labour unions in Argentina will try to resist the spending cuts and austerity plans that Milei has announced. Critics say Milei is a populist who's promised unrealistic solutions to complex problems, and that he will not be able to implement his plans, especially as he faces a fragmented Congress. During his campaign, Milei addressed this issue, saying, "In terms of political logic, I am a mistake, because what I have come to do is, in fact, stamp out the privileges of politicians." So basically, he's asking the turkeys to vote for Christmas. So what's the summary and conclusion here? Is Javier Milei a madman or a genius? Well, interestingly, that question was put to Javier Milei recently, and he said the difference between a madman and a genius is success. And I think that's actually a really good summary. And the people of Argentina won't actually know who they voted into power, whether these policies are going to work and prove to be genius, or if this is going to add fuel to the fire and make things significantly worse. So only time will tell whether Javier Milei is a genius or a complete madman.